Mobile, walk up and down twice a day for 5 to 10 minutes. Or better yet, try a power walk on your terrace or backyard for some fresh air. There are more helpful pet care tips at youmove.com, spelled YOUMOVE.com.
Maryland's Republican governor has come out against acting quickly to confirm a new Supreme Court justice. Speaking to the Texas Tribune Festival yesterday, Republican Governor Larry Hogan said that we should not be playing partisan games with the nation's highest court. Hogan adding it would be a mistake for the U.S. Senate to ram through a nominee on a partisan line vote. President Trump is expected to name his nominee to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on Saturday afternoon. Hogan saying we shouldn't let Ginsburg's death create more division in the nation. President Trump says it's up to the White House to approve a coronavirus vaccine, making that clear during a briefing that he just might overrule the FDA. The agency has said it wants time after volunteers are tested to make sure there are no side effects from a vaccine, but Trump says he doesn't want any delays. And make way for a lot of new Baby Yoda items just in time for Christmas. Disney launching a bunch of new Star Wars products in what's called Mondo Mondays starting on October 26th. Baby Yoda became an instant breakout star from last year's debut of The Mandalorian and will be on some of the new merchandise. Find us online anytime at usaradio.com. For USA Radio News, I'm Chris Barnes.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
One woman, one mission, shining light on corruption. This is UncoverDC with your host, investigative reporter, Tracy Beanz.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. It is Thursday, September 24th, 2020. You're listening to Uncover DC with Tracy Beanz on WSMN 1590 AM, WSMN 95.3 FM, streaming all over the internet on CloutHub, on Periscope, on YouTube, on Facebook, on DLive, and on RightAmericaMedia.com. Thank you guys for joining me today. Very busy show, lots of stuff to talk about. The show is brought to you, though, by Ageless Multi-Collagen. After you turn 20, your body naturally decreases its collagen production by 12% each passing decade. It's a big reason as to why skin appears thinner and more wrinkled as we age. Can attest. Ageless Multi-Collagen provides you with the 5 types of collagen your body needs in one complete protein. You'll enjoy powerful support for your body with results you can see and feel in just a few short weeks. Get Ageless Multi-Collagen for 51% off plus free shipping by going to healthwithbeans.com. That's healthwithbeans.com, or by clicking the link in the video description box below should you be watching on socials. You guys are fantastic. Thanks to Ageless Multi-Collagen. Just to let you know, we're going on hiatus for a while after today's show. Lots of stuff coming up in the next couple of months. Podcast will continue Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every week at 2:30 Eastern Time on every podcasting platform you could possibly ever find known to man. TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and online at UncoverDC.com and also RadioInfluence.com. Just a note to everybody that watches my co-host podcast, by the way, if you watch the Quite Frankly podcast, YouTube has decided to remove his ability to use his channel until December 13th. So if you want to find his show, you've got to go to Spotify or not Spotify or SoundCloud or, or Periscope or CloutHub. He's going to be on CloutHub very soon, and find his show there. So a lot of stuff going on in the news today. Yesterday we got a story from Ron Johnson and Chuck Grassley. If you guys have been listening to the show over the past several weeks, you know we have talked about Ron Johnson and what he has been uncovering and the attacks that he's been under. There's been a lot of the Democrats attacking Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson for supposedly sharing Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, Russian conspiracy theories. And as of the release of the report yesterday, we know more of what's going on. So I was reading this thing, and of course, the normal stuff is there. The bribery and the pay to play and the corruption and even human trafficking allegations, which are quite serious. Everybody has covered those. But I noticed something else. It's sort of an understory in this entire thing about Ukraine and foreign interference. And I want to explain it to you today in full from start to finish so that you guys understand why it's important as well to the greater story. So we know that in 2016, the Democrats were working with Ukrainian officials to tar and feather Paul Manafort, who became the campaign manager for President Trump. There was something called the Black Book Ledger. There was a Democrat operative by the name of Andrea Chalupa who worked with people at the State Department and at the and in Ukraine to create and fabricate, it appears now, this Black Book Ledger. What it ends up being in sum and substance is that the Ukrainians were actually interfering in the United States presidential election via the Democrat media complex and the DNC. So this is a very important underpinning of the entire story. Some point in 2018, I believe. Was it 2018? I'm not sure. One of those years, 2018, 2019. During the Mueller investigation, Giuliani is searching for information to defend President Trump in his capacity as his attorney. And he starts stumbling on the Ukrainian corruption, the Ukrainian influence in the 2016 election as a part of his work into defending President Trump from the Mueller investigation. Well, what he starts to find as he's doing this is quite alarming. He starts getting information about Ukrainian corruption, about Burisma, about, all of the stuff that Hunter Biden did, about the Democrat money, about the global corruption. And he starts realizing that there's a much bigger story here than meets the eye. John Solomon, reporter, has also been investigating this along the way, starts getting information. They start getting contact from a lot of people involved with the firing of this prosecutor in Ukraine by the name of Viktor Shokin, who was investigating the corruption and the money laundering and the criminality in Ukraine, and gets fired and held hostage basically by Joe Biden. So the Ukrainian connection to globalism is very big. Lots of NGOs getting involved. There's a Soros stronghold in Ukraine, absolute stronghold there. It's a very crucial part of the world. It's a very fragile country in terms of corruption, very well known for its corruption. The State Department is a part of that. Victoria Nuland had issues with Ukraine and Russia. I mean, it's been long-standing, the corruption and the issues and the power grab and the, back and forth there. And if you haven't yet, I recommend that you go watch the Blaze and Glenn Beck and what he has done, the work he has done into corruption in Ukraine. It was a really well done special. So this stuff, the Mueller investigation ends, but the Ukraine investigation doesn't. Giuliani's behind this. He's got contacts with a bunch of different people. A couple of the people whose names you should remember are Andriy Teleshenko and Lev Parnas. Two names that will come back in just a minute. These are Ukrainians. Andriy Teleshenko is a former Ukrainian embassy employee who worked with the State Department extensively for several years on issues related to Ukraine, and also other people, which we'll get into in a minute. And Lev Parnas is a Russian-American businessman who was close with some of the folks involved in Ukraine, including Viktor Shokin, the prosecutor who was fired by the bribe from Joe Biden. So I'm just keeping it as basic as I can because it gets super complicated. So they start getting hot and heavy on Ukraine. Giuliani's investigating. Solomon's on top of it. It's starting to gain traction in the Congress and Senate. People are starting to take notice before Joe Biden even announces that he is running for president. Sorry about that. I had a cough. What's interesting is that President Trump is now aware of all the stuff that's going on, as is Bill Barr, apparently. And President Trump, on his call to the new leader in Ukraine, who's elected to get rid of this corruption, a complete outsider, somewhat parallel to President Trump in that the Ukrainian people elected this complete outsider with integrity to try and bring this country back from the brink of destruction and corruption, has his first phone call with the leader. President Trump calls him, and what happens? There's all of a sudden he talks about Biden, he talks about Burisma, he talks about the 2016 election, he talks about Ukraine having the server, the CrowdStrike connection, all of that gets talked about on the call. And what happens? Vindman is on that call. Vindman, completely entrenched in the globalist dark power establishment, whose brother is also working at the NSC, who's friends and good friends with Eric Ciarmella, who is very close to Biden on Ukraine. Eric Ciarmella is at some of the meetings that are released in this report. They hatch this plot to try and, in the court of public opinion and also behind the scenes, flip the script on President Trump about Ukrainian corruption. So now we have this whistleblower complaint that's completely based on nothing filed. What is alleged to be said on the call is not actually said on the call. Vindman is behind the transcript. Vindman attempts to change the transcript, but the transcript is mysteriously locked away in a secure server where he can't access it. But the whistleblower complaint made its way on over, and now they're in a quandary. Forget all the minutia there. There's a lot to talk about, but it moves forward. The case moves forward. The Democrats, in some weird, horribly desperate move, decide they're going to move forward with impeaching the president for a perfectly normal phone call with a world leader. President Trump releases the transcript of the call. It doesn't matter. The impeachment hearings go on. During the time of the impeachment hearings, Rudy Giuliani is working with Lev Parnas and Andrei Teleshenko, who don't know each other, trying to get information about the corruption of the Democrats and others, Republicans as well, out into the public sphere to defend President Trump from this ridiculous impeachment. They're working super hard at it. There's text messages. The players in impeachment are going to come in now into this Biden Burisma scandal. George Kent, former ambassador. Marie Yovanovitch, former ambassador. William Taylor, one of their star witnesses, who testified about how horrible it was what Donald Trump was doing with Ukraine and they wouldn't arm them and blah, blah, blah. They were withholding arms in return for assurances that they would prosecute people. They legitimately flipped the script completely, a 180. And tried to pin everything the Democrats had done and corrupt Republicans onto President Trump. All of the witnesses in the impeachment scandal had something to do with the bigger scandal. All of the people that testified had everything to do with Ukrainian corruption. From the diplomats to the State Department to Fiona Hill, who was involved with Christopher Steele, every single witness in the impeachment inquiry had something to do with the greater Ukraine corruption. Every one. All of them. So, we're in the midst of the impeachment. Rudy Giuliani is dropping bombs left and right about what's going on there. In terms of Viktor Shokin, in terms of Marie Yovanovitch, who was corrupt as anything. Marie Yovanovitch when she met the new prosecutor, Lutsenko, who had been assigned to this case while she was still on duty, she handed him, as per Lutsenko, right from his own mouth in an interview with John Solomon, she handed him a do not prosecute list. You can't go after these people. And all underneath this is one name that we know very, very well. Stand by for YouTube to demonetize me. George Soros. George Soros has more offices, more headquarters for his non-governmental organizations in Ukraine than anywhere else in the entire world outside of the United States. Ukraine is a hub for these people. The amount of money that flows back and forth between non-governmental organizations and the government and these corrupt people and the oligarchs and even Russia in some cases is mind-blowing. It is a hub for them. It is a crucial hub for them. And anyone that looks to disturb that apple cart is in a lot of trouble. So Lev Parnas, working with Giuliani, a little bit of a shady character. Got to question some things about him and things he's done in the past, right? But is giving him text messages, information from Shokin about what had happened. Giuliani's out to prove that this was a pay-to-play, that Biden threatened, if you do not fire this prosecutor, you're not getting U.S. aid. The same exact thing, as I said, that they accused President Trump of doing that President Trump didn't do. And this is all being drug out into the forefront during the impeachment hearings, including Pam Bondi, who comes out and talks about all of this on the floor of the House during the impeachment. Fast forward a little bit to October of 2019. What happens? This is the understory to the bigger story that's reported in this report. Teleshenko comes public. He does a documentary with Chanel Ryan from OANN and Giuliani about the corruption in Ukraine. He was there. He knows it. He's got all the connections. He comes public with all the information he knows about what happened in 2016 with the election. He is tarred and feathered by the legacy media. He's attacked, his character's besmirched. He's completely destroyed in the court of public opinion. 29 years old. Maybe 30 now. But he's on the reporting. He's in the reporting. He does the documentary with Giuliani and Chanel Ryan. At the same time, in October, there's an arrest. Lev Parnas gets arrested. In January, Lev Parnas and his partner, Igor Fruman. In January of 2020, a tape leaks where President Trump is saying on the tape, quickly, get rid of Yovanovitch, get rid of her, because the person who recorded the tape, recorded this little business meeting, fundraiser meeting, that if you listen to it in full, actually ends up making President Trump look a lot better than people even could have imagined. Fruman, Parnas' business partner, Igor Fruman, was at this meeting, recorded the meeting, unbeknownst to anybody in attendance. And then when Parnas got into legal trouble, big legal trouble, he leaked the recording. When Parnas gets arrested with Igor Fruman for campaign finance violations, money laundering, all kinds of criminality. The Democrats come after Parnas because they know that he's working with Giuliani. And they want to go after him. They want to target him because he's providing too much information that is too hurtful to their cause. So they go after Parnas, and they have the Justice Department in New York weaponized against Parnas. They arrest him. Parnas flips. He starts providing all kinds of information to the Democrats. He comes out and says, I can't believe I trusted Giuliani and President Trump. I know these guys. I was working with them. Here's all these text messages and all this information of us talking with one another. The Democrats subpoena the phones of a sitting member of Congress on the committee of, the House Permanent Select Committee of Intelligence. There's evidence they subpoena the phones. of John Solomon, a reporter. And then later on, if you remember, Adam Schiff leaks that weaponized information out. Absolutely insane what they do. Completely cutthroat, completely against all norms. So I start looking into who was behind the arrest, who was behind the complaint that led to the arrest of Lev Parnas. Parnas was used to tar, feather, and besmirch anybody tied to the uncovering of Ukrainian corruption. Devin Nunes was accused of socializing with Lev Parnas. They went after him on, said he was meeting with him when he was actually on detail somewhere else. Didn't meet with him at all. As a matter of fact, he sued over it. Devin Nunes sued over this story. They tried to connect Devin Nunes to Lev Parnas in order to taint Devin Nunes. They tried to connect Victoria Tunsig and Lou DeGeneva to Lev Parnas to taint them. They tried to connect the president to Lev Parnas to taint him. And Giuliani the same way. They used Lev Parnas as a cudgel. So who was behind the arrest of Lev Parnas? Who was it that dug through FEC records, did the dirty work, figured out there was a violation? How did they know to even look? In January 2020, that question intrigued me quite a bit, and I did some research and found it. And ignore this lawn work going on outside. I posted an article at UncoverDC on January 27th, 2020. An open society-backed, nonpartisan, quote, watchdog group was behind the indictment of Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, revealing suspicion that the pair were being targeted for their role in uncovering wrongdoing in Ukraine. Now, that's not to say that Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman are pillars of all integrity and things that are good in the world. No. But they put targets on their backs. Because whether they flipped or they were double agents, who the hell knows, but they were providing information to people that was very detrimental to this straw man that was trying to be propped up by a brick here and a brick there as they executed a completely sham impeachment on the president of the United States for things that they had done in an attempt to cover up the corruption that they were involved in that is global in nature in Ukraine. I hope that you guys are starting to understand why this story is so important. Because on its face, it's complicated and it doesn't appear so. But I'm telling you right now, this is an underhanded sort of underground backroom way. This is the way it works. This is the way the cookie crumbles. This is how things are done. This is political operatives targeting people using the justice system. News broke this weekend, I said, in January of 2020, when a recording of President Trump speaking at a donor dinner party in 2018 was released by PBS NewsHour. The man behind the recording was Lev Parnas, an American businessman now at the center of the impeachment fiasco surrounding the president. The tape shows President Trump responding to Parnas' claim that former ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, was proclaiming President Trump would be impeached. In response, President Trump states, "Get her out tomorrow. I don't care. Get her out tomorrow. Take her out, okay? Do it." Yovanovitch was not removed from her position until approximately 1 year later. Parnas has been mentioned many times throughout the impeachment hearings, with House managers referring to recently disclosed text messages between he and Viktor Shokin. Shokin is the former Ukrainian prosecutor general who was fired in 2016 by then Ukrainian President Poroshenko. By now, the story is familiar. Vice President Joe Biden threatened to withhold aid from Ukraine if Shokin didn't terminate his investigation into Ukrainian energy company Burisma Holdings. Biden's son Hunter sat on the board of that company amidst corruption allegations. Parnas was indicted in October of 2019 along with his partners Igor Fruman, David Correa, and Andrei Kukushkin, I don't know, on charges that he allegedly funneled money from an unnamed foreign national into several super PACs contributing to Republican candidates. While the indictment alleges these donations were made to curry favor with politicians in order to ensure that a marijuana company the group was attempting to launch would be successful, what hasn't been reported is the origin of the information leading to the indictment. Here's where it gets important. The initial FEC violations were reported by Campaign Legal Center, who proudly boast on their homepage, quote, CLC complaint results in arrest of 2 Ukrainian-American Trump donors connected to Giuliani. CLC made their first complaint in 2018, and then recently in June of 2019, remember the date, they filed a supplement to that complaint. In the supplemental complaint, they used information from another lawsuit against Parnas when financial records were disclosed in that case. It involved almost $400,000 in loans Parnas received from the Poyas Family Trust. The money was supposed to go towards the production of a movie that never came to pass. Parnas didn't pay the loan back. He was awarded a judgment in the case that they've been unable to collect. As a matter of fact, the family makes a claim to the bond money in the SDNY case. The complaint by the CLC was made in July of 2018, right when he was working with Giuliani. And an extensive web search revealed little previous reporting regarding Parnas or Fruman until after the CLC complaint was filed. The first reports from legacy media outlets occurred on the day of the complaint. The CLC complaint references some obscure Russian language article in a blog, which is hyperlinked as a footnote in their complaint using Google Translate. They knew to look and target Parnas before Parnas was even a blip on the, quote, legacy media radar screen. Somehow the CLC knew to go after Parnas. The CLC is a proud recipient of funds from the Open Society Foundation. George Soros has ties to several of the witnesses in the impeachment case, including William Taylor, former Ambassador Yovanovitch, who provided Shokin a do not prosecute list that included a George Soros group. In fact, the CLC pens an article quoting Yovanovitch and mentioning Parnas, Fruman, and Giuliani. George Soros knew to go after Lev Parnas before anyone else did. And he did. When the complaint was filed in 2018, nothing happened for over a year. Until June of 2019. So that brings us to today. What happened? We got a report yesterday from Senators Grassley and Johnson in their joint committee entitled Hunter Biden, Burisma, and Corruption, the Impact on U.S. Policy and Related Concerns. There's all the basic stuff in there that you know, all the things that everyone has covered. But then there's something else really, really interesting. There is a Democrat lobbying firm called Blue Star Strategies that was very involved in Ukraine for years now. They work very, very closely with the State Department and Ukrainian heads of state. This is not some little chop shop. This is a big deal. The woman who is the co-founder and the chief operating officer of Blue Star Strategies is Sally Painter. Sally Painter. Sally Painter was questioned in this investigation into corruption that was led by Grassley and Johnson. These are powerful Democrat operatives. Understand, Sally Painter is on the board of advisors of every major globalist corrupt She's on the board of the Atlantic Council, the board of directors. She and her company were paid and engaged by Burisma to make problems go away. Directly worked for Burisma. Also on the board of the U.S.-Ukraine Business Council, an organization that features prominently in the report that UncoverDC did and the work that I did on the story about William Taylor, who sat on the board of a Soros-backed NGO in Ukraine for years. You guys know William Taylor. All of these stories will be linked below the YouTube video so that you can look at them. Very important. So we've got Sally Painter, high-powered Democrat lobbyist, working on behalf of Burisma and board member on every big high-powered globalist NGO and you can imagine. Just a little dig into her is enough to spend you hours and hours and hours. Lots of them. She's being questioned in front of the committee, and we find out something super interesting. Blue Star Strategies employed Andriy Teleshenko, the Teleshenko that appeared in the OAN documentary Working with Giuliani. That Teleshenko. They employed him as an employee of their firm until 2017. After 2017, Blue Star Strategies told the committee they had not talked to Teleshenko at all. At all. Didn't have any words with him at all. The problem for them and for Sally Painter is that they were speaking to Teleshenko via WhatsApp and other messaging services until 2019. Andriy Teleshenko provided those messages to the committee voluntarily. So there's a few different things going on here now. We have somebody running a company who is legitimately tied to Burisma financially, trying to make things okay, who knows of all of the stuff that was going on with Shokin and Burisma, because there's messages in here that, they show it. They're in the report. And some of them are in my piece. Painter is being questioned by the board, by the committee, and is very standoffish about the whole thing. There's a war going on for months about subpoenaing their records, etc., so on and so forth. Blue Star Strategies is contracted by Burisma in November of 2015, and then we learn that they were involved around the time that Shokin was fired. Also at those meetings with Blue Star executives, Ukrainian officials, State Department employees was Andriy Teleshenko, who was a key player in Blue Star's work with Burisma and was employed again until 2017. Teleshenko, to us, is most well known for his relationship with Giuliani. But during the same time that he was working with Giuliani to help expose corruption in Ukraine, he was also maintaining contact with Sally Painter from Blue Star Strategies. Text messages given by Teleshenko to the committee detail Sally Painter inquiring to Teleshenko about Giuliani and whether things were getting, quote, complicated for Teleshenko during the summer of 2019. Sally Painter WhatsApps to Teleshenko saying, "Everything okay? I'm hearing rumors." Teleshenko says, "Yeah, everything's okay. What rumors?" Sally Painter says that things were getting complicated for you. Teleshenko says, "Seems all fine. Do you have any details?" She says, "No, sorry, just that. No worries. Just checking on you, my friend." Teleshenko says, "Okay, thank you so much. Did it come from state? Let me know when you can talk." Painter says, "No, I can't tell you as it was in confidence, but the person just said things were getting complicated for you. The person is in Ukraine." Painter then references the Giuliani-Biden battle in an August 22nd, 2019 text message while asking about the trustworthiness of a guy named Andrei Yermak, who was a top aide to Zelensky and was one of the people who disputed portions of the impeachment testimony from Sondland. Remember Sondland? He was the guy that was a Trump appointee that donated to Trump, that the left destroyed and killed his businesses and threatened him. And he testified that there was no quid pro quo. And then he walked back his testimony and changed everything the second time he appeared. In the message about Yermak, she asks, does he understand the complexity of the Giuliani-Biden battle? Many thanks for your insights. This is August of 2019. But what got my attention is the next two things. Painter is seen in the messages telling Teleshenko to remove his affiliation to Blue Star Strategies from his resume. In other words, take us off your resume. Now, again, he's working with Giuliani at this point. When she's questioned about what that reference means, why did Sally Painter tell Teleshenko to remove his connection to Blue Star from his resume? She replied, he was working more and more with Mr. Giuliani, and we had a conversation about whether it would hurt him with the Republicans if he had Blue Star on his resume. So the questioner in the hearing asks her, so you're advising Mr. Teleshenko on how better to work with Giuliani and Republicans? And she replies, ironically, Mr. Teleshenko was asking my advice. On June 18th, 2019, important date, very important date. Painter sends a message to Teleshenko stating simply, quote, complaint filed. When asked what the complaint was, Painter states she has no recollection of what that meant. When they press her in the committee, she doubles down on the claim that she has no idea what complaint filed means. The complaint filed message comes immediately after a message from her that says, did you see Dems are going to open an investigation into Rudy Ukraine and Biden trips? Just FYI. That was on the 7th of June. 10 days later, on the 18th or 11 days later, complaint filed. Guess what CLC complaint was filed in June, just 2 days after that message? The supplemental complaint that led to the indictment of Lev Parnas by Campaign Legal Center, the same Soros-funded not-for-profit that filed the first complaint a year prior. This is the one that led to the arrest of Parnas. This is the one that was used by the legacy media to attack and impugn the character of Giuliani, Devin Nunes, John Solomon. The CLC bragged about their influence in the arrests. I have print screens, the letter, everything. Sally Painter, talking to Teleshenko, says complaint filed, literally right when the complaint is actually filed by the CLC to target Parnas. I asked Teleshenko yesterday, I talked to him on the phone, and I asked him, what was that complaint? What was it? Do you know? He said, oh, it has something to do with Giuliani. You know what? No, just that it has something to do with Giuliani. He said he warned Giuliani about it. I asked him, why are you, like, what was the nature of your, why are you still talking to these people if you know you're uncovering this corruption? You're working with Rudy Giuliani, who's trying to bring the truth to light about what happened in Ukraine. Why are you still talking to Blue Star Strategies and Sally Painter about defensive or offensive mechanism that they're taking, targeting people who have been working with Giuliani? He said, it's one of those things you keep your friends close and your enemies closer. This month in the Parnas case, there was a superseding indictment filed for more charges. I have been following that case since this report. Super interesting case. This is huge, okay? This is the underbelly, the dark underbelly of corruption and targeting and political operatives working to attack people. I don't know. It doesn't appear to me that Lev Parnas is that great of a person. That's not the point. The point is that Teleshenko had apparently maintained a relationship with Blue Star Strategies because he didn't want to be on the outs because of whatever reason. I'm sure there will be more to follow. Wink and a nod. And they were asking his advice and asking him for his opinion on things. And he was also working with Giuliani. And then all of a sudden, bing, bang, boom, the guy who was providing the damning text messages with Viktor Shokin, the fired prosecutor that could prove what happened in Ukraine with the Burisma thing and also with the 2016 election fraud, is targeted by George Soros before anybody in the world knows who the hell he is. And then when that doesn't work, a year later, Sally Painter is talking about a complaint that leads to his arrest. I'm sure it's just one big coincidence. I'm sure. I did reach out to some liaisons that I know with contacts with Giuliani for comment, and I did not hear back. It's an interesting story. It took me 40 minutes to explain, but share the video with your friends. Share it. There's so much more here. There's a lot of underhanded, dirty dealings going down behind the scenes. And with that being said, there's more to talk about today. There's more to talk about. About 2 hours before a couple hours ago, an article came out in the New York Times. Headline, in political charged inquiry, Durham sought details about scrutiny of Clintons. John Durham's team has sought information about the FBI's handling of the Clinton Foundation investigation, raising questions about the scope of the prosecutor's review. Ooh, I'm sorry, the Clinton Foundation, Why is this leaking out right now? From the beginning, they say, John H. Durham's inquiry into the Russia investigation has been politically charged. President Trump promoted it as certain to uncover a, quote, deep state plot against him. Attorney General William Barr rebuked the investigators under scrutiny, and he and Mr. Durham publicly second-guessed an independent inspector general and traveled the globe to chase down conspiracy theories. It turns out Mr. Durham also focused attention on certain political enemies of Mr. Trump, the Clintons. Mr. Durham investigating the Clintons? Whatever do you mean? Mr. Durham, the U.S. attorney in Connecticut assigned by Mr. Barr to review the Russia inquiry, has sought documents and interviews about how federal law enforcement officials handled an investigation around the same time into allegations of political corruption at the Clinton Foundation, according to people familiar with the matter. Mr. Durham's team members have suggested to others that they are comparing whether investigators in the Russia inquiry flouted laws or policies. It was not clear whether Mr. Durham's investigators were similarly looking for violations in the Clinton Foundation investigation, nor whether the comparison would be included or play a major role in the outcome of Mr. Durham's inquiry. The approach is highly unusual, according to people briefed on the investigation. Though the suspected crimes themselves are not comparable. One involves a possible conspiracy between a presidential campaign and a foreign adversary to interfere in an election, and the other involves potential bribery and corruption. And largely included different teams of investigators and prosecutors, Mr. Durham's efforts suggest the scope of his review is broader than previously known. The Clinton Foundation began about 5 years ago under the Obama administration and stalled because some former career law enforcement officials viewed the case as too weak to issue subpoenas. Ultimately, prosecutors in Arkansas secured a subpoena for the charity in early 2018. To date, the case has not resulted in criminal charges. Interesting. So the Clinton Foundation shows up in the Durham investigation. The Clinton Foundation shows up in the Durham investigation. Super, super duper interesting, no? Oh yes, friends. Oh yes. In other news, I wanted to play this earlier, but I got distracted by the Durham investigation, which, by the way, just everybody take a breath. It's coming. It's coming. It is. It's coming. Listen to this interview with Joe Biden and Axios on HBO.
To serve on the board of a Ukrainian energy company facing serious corruption charges, you were the vice president running point on Ukraine. The average Joe hears that and says, that sounds fishy. What's your understanding of what your son was doing for an extraordinary amount of money?
I don't know what he was doing. I know he was on the board. I found out he was on the board after he was on the board, and that was it. And there's nobody...
Something you want to get to the bottom of?
No, because I trust my son.
But that doesn't pass the smell test. Like when you're vice president, isn't there a higher standard? Don't you need to know what's happening with your family? Don't you need to put down some guardrails?
Unless there was something that was, there was something on its face that was wrong. There's nothing on its face that was wrong. So look, if you want to talk about problems, you know, let's talk about Trump's family. I mean, come on. This is...
So
these guys are amazing.
Let's talk about Trump's family. Okay, he gives him a minute. There's nothing. There is nothing. There is literally nothing. This guy is such a waste of air and space. I swear. He is such a waste of air and space. Whenever he has nothing to fill time, he laughs. You guys. Come on, man. Come on, man.
So you think that everything that happened was kosher?
You know there's not one single bit of evidence.
False.
Not one little tiny bit.
False.
To suggest anything done was wrong.
False.
You know that. But you keep asking me these questions. It's okay.
He doesn't know that. There was just a report issued. You lying. They just issued a report on this. Literally.
You know, you're doing what you have to do. But I'm not worried about it. Look, the American public knows me.
Last one on this. Say you're elected, you're in office. What guardrails would you have to be sure that your son, your brother Jimmy, doesn't do anything to trade on the family name?
They will not be engaged in any foreign business because of what's happened in this administration. No one's going to be seeking patents for things from China. No one's going to be engaged in that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So no foreign business for your relatives in office?
I'll believe that. Here, this is another way that Joe Biden responded to these questions yesterday.
How was your role as vice president in charge of policy in Ukraine and your son's job in Ukraine? How is that not a conflict of interest?
It's not a conflict of interest. There's been no indication of any conflict of interest from Ukraine or anywhere else. Period. I'm not gonna respond to that. Let's focus on the problem. Focus on this man, what he's doing, that no president has ever done.
What?
No president.
What? What is he doing? What is he doing, Joe Biden, that no president has ever done other than make the American people prosperous again? Focus on this man. How dare you question me? How dare you? I can't wait to see him lose his temper at the debates. Threaten to take Trump outside. Point in his face. Can't wait. Really can't. There's a video floating around of Nadler sort of waddling off the stage with Nancy Pelosi. Everybody's saying they think he soiled his pants and he's waddling off. He's trending on Twitter right now. I can't. Really quickly, there has been a lot of bad stuff going on in Breonna Taylor's situation. There have been police officers shot. There's organized rioting. It's not right-wing extremists. I can tell you that right now. It's not white supremacists either. Christopher Wray, you waste of space. It's really, really, really bad out there right now because no officers were charged in the death of Breonna Taylor. And nobody knows what actually happened in the case of Breonna Taylor because nobody's bothered to do the research. I want everybody to go to the TatumReport.com, TATUM report.com, and click on Breonna Taylor. What you're going to see is the report that the police did that was given to Tatum Report that lists the text messages and the pictures of the cars from in front of the house and back and forth. They were investigating one of the people that Taylor used to be with, and also she was involved with this drug activity. She just was. One of the main people in this drug ring had listed her address as his own on bank statements and other things. There are transcripts in this report of conversations that happened when these guys were in jail after the unfortunate killing of Breonna Taylor. They admit in those transcripts that the reason why she's dead is because the guy who was in that apartment with her at the time, they served this warrant on it because the kingpin in this drug ring had listed her address and was seen with her and used her car, etc. Fired at them first, and they all admit it. He ran and left her standing there in the hallway. She was not in her bed. She was not randomly sleeping in bed when these officers just randomly burst into her apartment and shot her to death in her bed while she slept. That is not what happened. It's just not what happened. And the grand jury received this evidence and therefore came to the decision that they came to. The one officer faces charges because he wantonly fired his weapon around. And bullets from his weapon went into other apartments and hit other things, and it was dangerous. None of the bullets from his weapon hit Breonna Taylor. I wanted to spend a little more time on this today, but I'm telling you, please, guys, you need to go to the Tatum Report and read this if you're interested in what's going on in the Breonna Taylor case. It's so important that we get the facts. This spells it out for you. It's, oh gosh, how many pages long? 41 pages. The police investigation right here in a booklet for you. Read it. Read it. It's legit. You can tell it's legit because they've got photos and things that they wouldn't have if they weren't internal. It's all in here. It's all in here. So next weekend, guys, October 2nd starts the Walkaway Ultimate Weekend in Washington, D.C. The Walkaway Ultimate American Weekend. Go to walkawaycampaign.com for information. You can come down there. You'll see there's a town hall on Friday evening at Sylvan Theater where you can get your tickets. It's Lara Trump, Shamika Michelle, Diamond and Silk, and Katie Hopkins. Then Saturday is a march and rally so that we can show the world that we're not silent. We're an unsilent majority. Unsilent. I'll be speaking at the march and rally, and I've been helping to plan this event. Please go to walkawaycampaign.com to find out more details. There's also videos there where you can learn a lot about security. Also, the week after that, I'm going to AMP to speak there and be their official correspondent. You can go to AmericanPriority.com. That's AmericanPriority.com and click on AmpFest 2020 and purchase your tickets for that event at Trump Doral in Miami. You can use code BEANS with a Z. You can use code BEANS. Thank you guys so much for listening to the show today. Excuse the little short hiatus that we're doing for at least, it's not really short. It's going to be at least a month. And I'll have other content out for you if you follow my stuff on socials. And that's it, guys. I hope you found this information valuable, and I will talk to you very soon. Have a great day.
For hardworking Americans Americans. Uncover DC with Tracy Beanz on WSMN, AM 1590 and FM 95.3.